Hour 3 Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Live from Montreal, Royal Montreal Golf Club. The President's Cup beginning tomorrow. Got a little arbitration later in the hour. Darren Dreger will join us here in just a moment. Best bets coming up. We love it.
Had to straighten Doogie out. There was a rental car that we have to take the three of us home, and Doogie had the idea in his head because he's the producer, that he would be driving the car home, and that is absolutely not happening. As much as we love Doogie, I don't think he's been on many road trips like this. I don't trust him in a foreign city. It's not happening.
Me neither.
You're operating the car.
I will run the whole operation.
Are you sure?
I'm very positive, Doogie.
Okay.
Now, if you mixed in like a really quality lunch menu today, I might have a different impression on exactly the way you can operate around the world. But you going penne red sauce means you cannot be driving the streets of Montreal.
No.
Not allowed.
Just
and
a
it's
simple choice.
disappointing.
A simple
You had
choice.
to
You
at
can't
least
It's a
go
simple
wrong.
choice,
You
but
had
it's the
to
wrong
go-
one.
It was a great Italian place. You had to go at least meat sauce.
Yes, you had to mix something in. Or not penne. I love penne, but it's the most basic move. Spaghetti and penne.
I thought he was going to do what my kids do. Just some little bit of butter, please.
I know.
And I would be like, I'd throw him out.
It's disappointing. Like we're whining and dining Doogie in Montreal, and that's how he's going to operate. So, yeah, he won't be driving home. We'll be driving back to the hotel. No Habs game tonight. No Maple Leaf game tonight. But, again, we were talking about Matt Sundin, who's in town, who's got the Maple Leaf record for career goals. But Austin Matthews, 52 behind him. And he's played half the games that Matt's played, which is incredible. Matt's did it in 900 and something games.
Matt was a
played
consistent 35 goal scorer.
every single year. He scored 30-plus every single year in his career. And here in Toronto, it was just constantly 35, 35, 38, maybe a 40. And obviously Matthews is at a completely different level. But that 52, like the fact that it almost seems like a foregone conclusion, and it's more about guessing when he's going to do it. Like, will he do it by the trade deadline? Like last year, he had 52 by the trade deadline. You know, is he going to get – what is more likely? Matthews passes Matt Sundin for the team record by the trade deadline, or Ovechkin passes Gretzky this season by the end of the year?
Both fascinating questions. It's so difficult to score goals, and these guys are so good. It's much like McDavid. How year after year we say, you can't guarantee this guy's going to get 120 points, but guess what he does?
He does it every single year.
Even with that trash start last year, this guy was outrageous to get them back on track and get back into the thick of things, and he had 100 apples.
Yes.
So for Matthews, it's like, is he really, like, are we going to guarantee this guy 50? But it almost seems like that's the business he does out there. Much like Pettersson, where it's just like you got to do what you do. It's like Matthews, that's what he does. It's like he gets the touches, he gets in the right areas, he gets those quality scoring chances, and there's going to be 50 of them that go in the net.
Yeah. I think if he's healthy, I think 50 it's a lot. I'd be shocked if he didn't score 50.
But that's goofy to say.
It is, but he deserves that type of goofiness.
Yeah.
He deserves it, just like Ovechkin did at one point in his prime. And Gretzky did. Like, remember in the 80s, like, people are like, well, is Gretzky going to, what, are you going to have 180 points? Yes, he will be doing that. Like, that is just a formality. That's how good he is. And Austin, again, has 368 career goals in 562 games played. And Matt has 420 career goals as a Maple Leaf in 981 games. So he's 52 back in 329 less games.
That's crazy stuff.
Like, it's absurd. And Sittler's at 389. He will, if he's healthy, he's going to pass Darryl Sittler. Joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline, here's our TSN hockey insider, Darren Dreger. Dregs, I'll ask you the question I just threw to O. What do you think is more likely? Matthews hits 53 goals by the trade deadline and passes Matt Sundin's team record for goals, or Alex Ovechkin scores his 42 at any point this year and passes Gretzky?
Oh, boy. I mean, that's an excellent question. As long as Austin Matthews, and I think I heard you guys coming into the segment, you could qualify both ways, right? Like, there's no way that Ovi is getting to 42 if he's not as healthy as he needs to be. That's pretty obvious. And same applies to Matthews. But, he scored 69 in, 81 games last year? Is that what it was?
Yeah, he didn't play a full year.
Yeah. I might lean on Matthews. And, for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's certainly capable of it, but I think he's got some swagger going into this year. And not that he needs more, and I'm not saying there's a cockiness and overconfidence, but being captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs is special to him. I know that. So as long as the health is there, March 7th is the NHL trade deadline. You're closing in on the end of the year. I think he could have 50 by that point.
Wow.
Aaron, earlier Brian was talking about the rankings and where Nylander was at and where Marner's at, and I think it was some recency bias involved in it where Nylander was just ahead. And then we got into what's in store for Mitch Marner. How do you think this plays out? Because last year with Willie, it was like, and I don't know why they needed to see this because they've seen it before. Maybe they wanted a backup season, but it was like, maybe show it to you and show it to us, and then it'll happen. But Mitch has basically shown them a lot for a long time. Is it the same approach with him? Like, does he have to be dialed in like he has been every season for the team to say, oh, okay, maybe we're going to commit long-term to you?
No, I guess yes and no. You obviously can't take a huge step backwards, and nobody expects that to be the case. But, you're talking about a team that's always going to be a cap team, no matter what the cap is. And Mitch Marner is going to expect some level of raise. But, he's made it abundantly clear, even though, going into training camp, he also said, look, I don't want to talk about this every single day. And I think we can all appreciate why. If this group is going to do something special this year, and that's not graded on what they do in the regular season, we've seen enough of that. We're talking about the playoffs. Then it does feel like everybody's going to have to raise their game another notch. What does that look like for Mitch Marner? And are we measuring it based on point production? I don't think I am. And I don't think that we're going to measure Marner's success until you get him in the playoffs. The unfortunate reality for Brad Treliving and the Toronto Maple Leafs is you better have a good handle on what his future with the Leafs looks like well in advance of March 7th, again, the trade deadline. But look, this is just lip service, and everybody would say the same of any of the nucleus top players with the Toronto Maple Leafs, any team in the league. He's as motivated, says he's as motivated as he's been in a long, long time. And when you got guys like Crosby and Nate McKinnon and some of the players that he trained with this summer speaking out and saying how good he looks, then let's see it. And if he's that good, then the business will look after itself.
Darren, what do you make of the two different groups at scrimmage? Is this every coach gets to this point where he's like, I want my team, I want to do systems, I want to get to it now?
Yeah, that's exactly the way it's starting to measure at this point. And, you still haven't seen some guys like Steven Lorentz is going to weigh in here in the near future. Next game, possibly, is what I'm being told. So does he factor in even a little bit? Well, I guess with the remaining games of the preseason, we're going to find out what that looks like. I don't think there were any surprises in the groupings, but I know that Craig Berube wants to get as close to regular season ready as quickly as he can, and that's all systems generated, right? And we could see that in the first couple of games that they played, just defensive zone stuff, the breakdowns that you're seeing that aren't foreign to preseason hockey, but it's a completely different environment for these players. So he's going to want to work with a group that he believes is going into the regular season as soon as possible. And look, when you look at how he split the groups, it's interesting. I'm not going to be one who piles on Easton Cowan as an example, but there's got to be message sending in that, isn't there? Like, if this kid isn't going back to the Ontario Hockey League and the London Knights, then in the time that he has remaining, and that'll be a decent look, I think, in the regular season, he's got to find a way to bring a little bit more of the wow factor that we saw last year. And the sense around him is that he's now focused on the details. He doesn't want to make a mistake, even though he's grown as a hockey player. So
you got to do what you do, Dregs. Like if you're a game breaker, you still got to do the game breaker first and do the details after.
I'm with you. And he hasn't been bad. He's been okay, but there hasn't been any pop to his game. And there's still plenty of time here, but the Leafs, like so many teams around the league, guys, we have this conversation on an annual basis with the tweeners, the players that you'd love to be able to send them to the American League, because that's where they can further develop. Well, that's not an option for Easton Cowan. He's got to go back to the OHL. And the only way he's not going back there sooner than later is if he finds another year or two, and he needs to do that real soon.
Yeah, I mean, the first group has 24 players. That doesn't include Connor Dewar and Yanni Hakanpää, who've been injured, and we presume that those two, if they are healthy, would be a part of that group. And the second group includes Easton Cowan and Nikita Grabenkin, another kid who's created a little bit of buzz. And it does seem, they're on the outside looking in, and that probably is a pretty significant message that they should be picking up on. With Darren Dreger, our TSN Hockey Insider, reading today about the Shesterkin situation, who's obviously a superstar goalie. He's one of Vezina. He was up for the Hart a couple of years ago. And even his tie to Swayman, how maybe there's some sort of a determination from either the goalies themselves or their agents that it's time for goalies to move the bar up. Like, it's time for them to get paid more. Carey Price got paid, I think, $10 million. Yeah. I think Bobrovsky's at 10 or 10.5. And essentially, even though Swayman's an RFA, Shesterkin will be a UFA after this year, that they're like, it's time to start paying us $11 million a year, $12 million a year. Is that your impression here?
It is with Shesterkin. There's no doubt about that. And look, Brian, the New York Rangers don't have a problem with resetting the goalie market, historically speaking. They really don't. So if you're looking at 10.5 as the benchmark, then, okay, what's the sweet spot for Shesterkin? Is it 11.25? Is it $12 million? Is it higher than $12 million? Igor Shesterkin wants to win. And when you look at the number of players, I think it's, 13 players for the New York Rangers going into the final year of their contract. So, again, you're going to have another season of all-in for Chris Drury, the GM, and the New York Rangers. And Igor Shesterkin is going to be a part of that. It's an amicable back and forth. But he's made it clear that he doesn't want to think about this. He doesn't want to have to talk about it in season. That's age old for players who have the leverage of Igor Shesterkin. But, again, the sweet spot feels like it's in the 11s on an 8-year deal. So whether that's 11.25 or creeping closer to 12, I don't know. Both sides are keeping it fairly tight. But the New York Rangers know that this guy deserves to get paid top dollar and reset that market.
Hellebuck's got to be like, so I'm pretty good, and I'm like 8, and these guys all need 11, especially Swayman, who doesn't have a big sample size, Darren, of playing in the league.
You're right, but just to throw a little bit of shade at Tom Fitzgerald, who's a great guy, and the New Jersey Devils, there was a deal to be made to trade Hellebuck to the New Jersey Devils prior, of course, to his extension in Winnipeg. And the primary reason they didn't make that deal is because New Jersey was worried about what that deal was going to look like. And now, again, if Shesterkin's getting 11.25, 11.5, 12, or north of 12, you're right. You got to be looking at Connor Hellebuck if you're any other team that had interest trade-wise in Connor Hellebuck and going, oh, boy, we kind of missed the mark there.
Well, in all fairness, couldn't he have called the agent and said, what's the deal going to look like, mister? And then we could maybe pull the trigger on this? I don't know. It sounds weird to me.
Well, they got a pretty good goalie now. We'll
see how they do.
Out in New Jersey.
Yeah. I mean, 8.5 for Hellebuck is just an incredible contract.
Noodles talks about it all the time, guys, where it's these 35 goal-scoring wingers are getting $10 million a year. And regardless of what position we're talking about, there's no more important position than the goaltender.
No.
So I'm glad these guys are standing up and say, you know what, screw it, you're paying me. Mm-hmm. And that's just the way it is. Can you imagine the New York Rangers without Shesterkin?
Yeah, it's mandatory. They got to have him.
You can't. And you guys have probably chewed on this a little bit, but it's an interesting Leafs storyline for me. And I think Mike Johnson made this point in wondering about Stolarz and Joe Woll last night as part of the broadcast. By the way, I mean, preseason hockey just sucks, doesn't it? I mean,
it's a grind, man. It's a grind.
Yeah, it's a grind. But I mean, what's a fair split? And I don't Woll, if he's healthy, probably needs to get the majority of the starts. Stolarz looks like a legit number 2. But what is that split? Is it 60-40? Is it closer to 50-50? It's a good problem to have if it's a problem.
Well, it's really on Joseph Woll to prove who he is, and they've committed to him. They gave him the 3-year deal.
Yeah.
They're locked in.
Yeah.
It's not an exorbitant amount of money, but it can be if the guy's only going to play 20 games every year. Like they basically, I think they've shown their hand, haven't they, Dregs? Like they're paying him $3.8 million, I believe. If that guy, if Joseph Woll by the end of the year determines he's more of a backup than a tandem or than a starter, that is that's a problem. That's going to be a trouble for the Leafs.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't think it is going to be a problem. I mean,
as long as he plays well, it won't be. I mean, listen, it could be a great contract. If he gives you 45, 50 starts and he's one of the 15 or 20 best goalies in the league, it's a steal.
Yeah.
I think it's a smart play and a smart bet, but he's still got a lot to prove is my point.
Yeah, and you don't bring in Anthony Stolarz unless you're a little bit concerned. And you need a guy with some pedigree to come in there at a fair price, which they paid, to not only push him, but also act clearly as the insurance clause if Woll gets hurt or he can't sustain the crease. So I don't see goaltending as a big issue, but it was curious how MJ kind of talked about it last time.
Yeah.
And I think actually he talked about 41 and 41 being the 50-50 split.
It wouldn't shock me.
Either.
I mean, listen, with Woll and his injury history, I think if you're the Leafs, I would sign off on 41 starts right now.
Yeah.
You guaranteed me 41 from Woll. I think that's a win.
Yeah, and if he kind of progresses and shows that he's different than that, give him more.
Absolutely.
But as a starting point, you take 100%. It all day long.
Yeah, for sure. With Darren Dreger, our TSN Hockey Insider. Yeah. Bettman yesterday, Gary Bettman came out and emphatically said that expansion is not on the table. Are we to believe that, or where do we stand on this?
Yeah, I believe it, but I mean, it's his temporary answer. I think that's also fair. So if you're looking into a crystal ball, do I expect expansion in the next 3 years? No, I don't. 5 years? I wouldn't bet that it's not going to happen in year 4 or year 5. Mm-hmm. And that's just watching and listening to the cadence of Bettman and his deputy, Bill Daly, right? What we know is that there is an abundance of billionaires out there trying to get their hands on major sport, and that includes the National Hockey League. And, you're looking at the continued coverage that swirls around the area of Atlanta. You're looking at Houston, Texas. You're looking at some prime spots in the United States that I'm sure the NHL is hoping that they can grow the game with. I guess, again, I'm asking questions. I see how the streams and the growth systems of hockey have developed over time, too. I mean, we're training 5-year-olds now on a day in and day out basis. I mean,
crazy
that's
stuff.
Reality. It is. And that's not just in Canada. That's across North America and literally across the world. So are we convinced, and maybe you guys know the answer already, and maybe we're all just dumbed down by already what we've seen in 32 teams. You creep up to that 34-team level in the National Hockey League with American League systems and then East Coast and all of that. Where's that talent pool coming from?
Tregs, come on, man. You're talking about AHL teams. Sorry. Yeah. Brutal for the game. It's bad for the game. I don't care about growth. You can't put that on the ice, man.
I hear you. And I'm sure there are other owners, even though who doesn't want the handout, right? Like, of course, when you're talking about expansion fees north of $1 billion, who doesn't want a slice of that pie if you're an NHL? I get it. But at the end of the day, it has to be about the product. And, I don't know. That's why I do think that the NHL is going to expand. I really do. Mm-hmm. I think based on the level of financial interest, the deep pockets out there, it will expand. I'm not comfortable saying that it's going to happen in the next 5 years.
It also just makes it so much more difficult to win when you keep adding more and more teams. If you're like the Canadian markets, it's been over 30 years, and now you're going to add 2 teams who are going to have a leg up. I'm sure they're going to have the same system as Vegas and Seattle. Yeah. And, they're not going to be awful teams and the old school expansion teams where you beat up on them and it takes them a decade to figure it out. They're immediately going to be competitive and immediately better than a lot of long-standing teams. And it makes it that much more difficult, I think, for for certain markets to say, okay, how are we going to make this work? How are you going to get to the promised land? And I would guess if you keep expanding, at some point they're probably going to have to throw out there the option of expanding the playoffs and changing different things, because you have 34, 36 teams, and they're going to have 16 teams make the playoffs.
Oh, you're talking about best of 3 first rounds and
or
stuff like that.
That's something that I think will end up happening. Exactly, a best of 3 or a one-off to get in, or something like that.
All kinds of stuff.
But I also think, fellas, that's why Bettman comes out as definitive as he did to say it's not on their radar, because he's a smart man and he knows what our line of questioning is going to be coming up here at the next Board of Governors meeting, and then again in December or whatever, early December. You know, if expansion is even remotely on the radar, exactly what you guys said, then is the follow-up. Why aren't, and every time you ask Bettman about the playoff matrix and why don't they expand and why aren't they willing to change and the play-ins and all of that, he dismisses us like we don't have a clue of what we're talking about.
Right.
So I think that's probably why he was, kind of so upfront with his directive recently here.
Yeah.
The other thing is, guys, and Hayes, it bothers you, it bothers me. The idea of going to markets like Atlanta and Houston when secondary team in Toronto should be on the front burner.
No-brainer.
It's a no-brainer, and they continuously ignore it. And I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, Dregs, as far as the Maple Leafs' influence for their want or not wanting it, but a secondary team is a layup in the league.
Well, right, and their territorial restrictions and guidelines, all of that can be overcome. I'm not going to put a percentage on NHL owners because in fairness, I haven't talked to all of them about it. I've talked to a handful of them about it, and rather than when you're talking expansion, that's where they're at now. Okay, if we're talking expansion, then let's put it in a market where we know we're going to make money, and there's not going to be a struggle 5 years, 10 years, 50 years from now. And Toronto was always the obvious target that comes up.
Absolutely. All right, Dregs, we'll leave it there. We'll do it again soon. Thank you for this.
Okay, boys, enjoy the tournament.
You got it. Darren Dreger, our TSN Hockey Insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Yeah, Toronto's second team would make a lot of sense, but not with Bettman. Bettman won't do it. As long as he is the commissioner, I don't think he'll ever entertain it. I do wonder if the next commissioner might, but who knows when that's going to be happening. I mean, Bettman's had a stranglehold over that position for over 30 years. Not going anywhere anytime soon. There's been a lot of President's Cup chatter today, and, of course, coverage of the President's Cup on Overdrive, brought to you by Subaru Canada. Enjoy fall to the fullest with symmetrical full-time all-wheel drive. Visit your local Subaru dealer to book a test drive today. Got our best bets coming up, a little arbitration coming up as well. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.
Now, is that going to be a problem?
Yeah, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem for them. It's outrageous, egregious, preposterous.
Overdrive Arbitration.
I've been wanting a piece of them for years.
You think we got a case?
Your face is my case.
All right, Overdrive Arbitration brought to you by Boston Pizza, the best place for any family meal. Plus, for the month of September, kids eat free with minimum purchase when you dine in. So grab the kids and hustle into your local BP tonight. Very simple stuff with arbitration. We love it. Maybe it's a player, maybe it's a team, maybe it's a fan base. They're going into arbitration, and they're going to be offered something, and they can either take it or leave it, right? We're going to play the role of whoever that happens to be, right? Very simple stuff.
No better person for it, because I've been in real arbitration.
You've done it. You've been there. You've experienced it before. Austin Matthews walks into arbitration. He is awarded 50 goals on the season, on the nose, 50 on the nose. Does he take it or does he leave it?
Is there a caveat with team success?
No, there's not. There's no team success. It's simply you are handed another 50-goal season on the nose. Do you take it or leave it?
Dude, come on, man. This is almost a layup. That is a take it.
Really? It's 69 a year ago. And he's going to accept 19 less before he even drops the puck?
But here's the problem I have with this notion and your philosophy or your view on this. It's like you're totally disrespecting 50 goals. You are.
He is.
No, you
the way
are.
he plays the game of hockey, he looks down on 50.
You've blown past 50, and you're like, that's just what that guy does. don't disrespect the number 50. It's one of the great numbers for goal scoring in the league.
It is.
So let's just also celebrate 50 and not take it for granted. You ask Ovi how many times he'd done it, how much he'd take a 50-goal season right now.
50's phenomenal, man.
So let's just give him the 50 and leave it at that. I think it would be crazy to blow past it and say, oh, no, you do better things than what 50 represents. That would be insane
It
talk.
is, yet he may be the greatest goal scorer of all time. He really might be. He might be better than Ovechkin.
So what you're saying is that talk is insane, but this is Austin Matthews,
I
and
guess
he does different
what
things.
I'm saying is, while he's in his prime, I want to leave it because I want to see him try to better that. I mean, I hear what you're saying, 50. I get it. I grabbed the coffee. I was walking around the Bell Center this morning reading about the most famous 50-goal season ever, I would say, is Rocket Richard, the first guy to ever do it. The Rocket hit 50, changed the game. Obviously, you have 50 and 39 by Gretzky. You got a lot of famous 50-goal seasons, but the Rocket did it first. I was looking at the stats of Guy Lafleur. He did it, I think, 4 years in a row or something, just 50, 50, 50, more than that even at times. But this guy, like, he's in that category. I know that's sacrilegious in a town like Montreal, but this guy can score like Rocket Richard. This guy scores probably better than Guy Lafleur.
I know, but if you sat
now.
him down in a candid moment, don't you think he would be like, yeah, I'd be happy with 50?
50's a remarkable number.
It really
before
is.
you drop the puck to guarantee 50, again, 99.9% of players in the history of this game would be disgusted at the idea of you saying, I'm not taking that. Would be insulted. You're one of them. You'd look at that and say, if I guarantee you a 50-goal season, you'd be like, are you nuts? I'm taking that. Like, regardless of who you are.
I think you take the 50-goal receipt and you stuff it in your jeans. Your medium-sized jeans.
You're medium-sized, yes. I mean, 50s, listen, that would be something. Then all of a sudden you're racking up 50
So I'm saying yes, you take it, and you're saying
I'm saying leave it because where he is in his prime. I think 2, 3, 4 years from now, I'm taking 50 all day because then you're just trying to rack up 50-goal seasons. I just feel like this guy – he's in his prime. He's clearly the best goal scorer in the world. I think he might be the greatest goal scorer
All right,
ever.
I'm going to change
and
my...
I want to see him go for more than 50. I don't want to start my year knowing it's only 50. And I know that's an outrageously, almost insulting thing to say.
Yeah,
Only
I'll
50.
change my answer because although we want to see team success, we want to see the Maple Leafs go far in the playoffs, we're also talking about a guy's career where you're going to be talking about an era of hockey for the Maple Leafs where this guy. So just pump home as many.
But that's
as
what
you
I'm
can.
saying. Like
you got me to buy in. You got me to buy in.
The statue. You know where I stand on statues, but there's 4 of them here in Montreal. It's Howie Morenz, Rocket Richard, Jean Beliveau, Guy Lafleur. Like, and the Habs are very forthright in this. They're like, these are the 4 that are above everyone else. And then there's other, plaques of like Larry Robertson's in there, Patrick Waugh, Doug Harvey, other great players from here. But those 4 are different. And looking at their stats and then the cups and everything, you're like, man, that's special. And if Matthews can mix in a cup and then it's a statue 100%.
Individual, maybe.
100% on his.
He might be off the beaten path on Legends Row.
He may have a different Legends Row. I think that actually would be the case. I think if they win the cup, he's the captain and he's the man. He
would be off to
separate.
the side with the cup beside him.
The indisputable greatest Maple Leaf of all time and the greatest athlete in the history of Toronto sports. Like, that's what's there for him. And to see the stats, 60, 69, 58, like that's what I'm talking about. All right, the Montreal Canadiens walk into arbitration. They are awarded missing the playoffs by only a few points. In other words, in the mix. Do they take it or leave it?
Man, Gortz, what does he want? Gortz wanted to be in the mix.
In the mix.
I think you leave it and you say, you know what? Forget about. There is the opportunity to blow by in the mix and just get in. Like, I always go back to Chicago, the Blackhawks with that young team. Those guys went from, like, making the playoffs, getting some experience, and then winning a Stanley Cup.
Yep.
And then they were off to the races. So why not let's just speed it up and skip the in the mix and just take it. Like, just leave it and say we want to make the playoffs. Screw it.
Okay.
Especially if they get off to a great start, they get goaltending, and Laine works out, and they've got the right mix of young kids. Gorton said it. He goes, we can't have all these guys in the same team. It's just not possible. It would be too young. There'd be too many mistakes. They like their veterans. You just pick the right guys and go for it. Make the playoffs or make a push.
Okay, you're leaving it. I'm taking it because it's been so
Don't say long. Don't say so long.
Hasn't been so long. 21, they were in the Cup final. But they've been so far out of it the last few years. Like, not even a contemplation of whether or not they're in the mix. And I still think they're a year or two away. I still don't think they match up necessarily with the Torontos, the Bostons, the Tampas, the Floridas. You tell me they end up with 89 points, 90 points, and that's what this would indicate. That's still a really positive season. That means I guarantee you there's growth. Because it could go the opposite way, right? It could get uglier in Montreal. There's no guarantees they take some big step.
Yeah, buddy, there's never any
Never a guarantee in pro sports. For any team in terms of the expectation, this would be guaranteeing a step or two. This would be guaranteeing Marty St. Louis is pushing the right buttons. They've picked the right players. They have the right mix. The goalies played well. This guarantees it. I'm taking it. I would take it if I were the Montreal Canadiens. All right, there are 3 Canadian golfers on the international team. They all walk into arbitration. They're all awarded a 2-2 record. 2-2. Do they take it or do they leave it?
It's almost like, and you don't want this, you don't want me to go Fergie on this. It's almost like I have a follow-up question saying, where does that get them?
In terms of the overall
yes. I almost want to ask the question before I answer the first part of it, like where does that put them at 2-2?
I don't have an answer for you.
I'm going to leave it on the table because I don't know if 2-2 for the 3 of them will be good enough for team success. I think one of them's got to be dialed in. Maybe like Mark Immelman said, it's Corey Connors has got to go 3-1 or something. Maybe he's got to do something like that for these guys to do it. So I'm going to leave the 2-2 for all of them.
Okay.
I think it's a loser's race to want a 500 record, Hazy.
I think you sold me on that. I'm going to leave it too. Screw it, man. You're on home soil, and guess what? This international team has had their doors blown off for a long time in this tournament. They're 12-1-1. Like they're chasing it here. At some point, you got to put your pedal to the metal here and say someone's got to be better than that.
Yeah.
Now you're risking someone being worse than 2-2. Like, I wonder if Weir would take that right now. You guarantee me 2-2 across the board. Again, they're not playing together. That means everyone played pretty well, and you would think the team is kind of in the mix. But I believe you got to be hoping for more from one of them at least. Like, someone's got to put together a 3-1, or something like that, or 2-1-1 and have one against Scotty or something like that.
Just be on fire. Be on fire.
I think it's mandatory. All right. The Blue Jays walk into arbitration. They are offered a deal for Vladdy Guerrero Jr. of under $300 million, under market value for Vladdy, but he has to play third base permanently throughout that deal. Take it or leave it.
Dude, I'm leaving that. I do not want Vladdy paying third base one day.
Me
Don't
neither.
you think he's perfect?
I'm leaving it too. He can't. I don't think he can play third base.
No, and I don't know
determined.
I don't know why that's resurfacing. I thought it's been a nice fit at first base. I think he's improved his defense over there. Why are we even bringing up third base again? Is it because they don't want to go find a third baseman?
Part of that, and because
what the
of
hell
money.
are we talking about here? He's a first baseman.
Yes, he is. It's
so
been
just
well
established. Leave it, everything about this on the table, and let's never bring up the idea.
I agree with you. You can't have a scenario here where you think you're going to improve as a team with Vladdy at third.
Who brought that up? Like, did the team bring that up? Was it Vladdy? Because Vladdy seems to be fired up.
Vladdy wants it. Vladdy wants to play third. And partially, I think, because he wants that contract that comes with playing third base. He wants to justify the contract. That's coming into this season, the idea of paying a first baseman over $300 million was absurd. Did not exist.
Okay, then for contract negotiations only, you go to him and say, forget about the idea of getting.
That's the thing.
I'm playing third base. Sorry.
And that's where I think, again, he's pushing for it. I think the team might want to. Listen, it would be great if he played third. It would be great if he's capable of playing, but that means he would have been doing it the last 4 or 5 years. The reason he's been at first is because he can't play third base. It's too important of a position. You cannot justify all this run prevention talk over the last couple of years and say, screw it, because we're paying him so much, we're just going to plant him at third base.
Yeah, and if
he's got to play first.
This is not a body type shot, but you don't see too many guys with that big a frame over there at third base. It's just not.
You have to be able to move. You got to be
like he's worked on his conditioning, but he still does not look like a third baseman.
He's a first baseman.
Exactly.
That's what he is, and there's a chance by the end of the contract he's a DH. I mean that is likely going to be the case.
Exactly the second most important point.
Probably going to be the case. All right, the Dallas Cowboys walk into arbitration. They are offered a playoff spot in one playoff win. and then they lose in the second round. Do they take it or leave it? One playoff win for the Dallas Cowboys. They're 1-2 right now. They look awful.
Dude, I'm leaving that on the table. They're the same thing. They have bigger expectations than that. They're the same. They're similar to the Maple Leafs. A lot of hype, a lot of expectations, and they fall flat. Of course they want more than one win. I'm completely leaving that on the table. I think that's even a ridiculous question.
I would have left it 3 weeks ago at 1-2, and what I've seen so far, I'm taking it.
You think it's so bad?
You're
so bad right now for them that they're grasping onto that, and they want to have that to say, you know what? At least we made the playoffs and we won a game.
They have been so horrible the last 2 weeks. And the first week, they beat Cleveland and Deshaun Watson, who didn't know how to play football.
Do you think Jerry Jones would call Billy Belichick?
I am very curious to see whether or not that would ever happen. I don't think it will, because I don't think Jerry Jones would allow him into his world.
If they drop one more, they're going to fire him.
McCarthy's in trouble. I think Doug Peterson's in trouble. I wonder if Belichick would go to Jacksonville and say, that's where he makes sense. I'm going to Jacksonville, a kind of embarrassing organization, the way it can be run at times. Go to those owners and say, you're out, and I'm taking over the whole operation. Go stand over there, and this is Bill Belichick's job. That's what I think I could see happening. But if I'm the Cowboys right now, you guarantee me the playoffs and a playoff win, I'm taking it, man. Especially after they just paid Dak all that money. He's got to get something cooking here. Like, he's got to get into the playoffs. He's got to. You have to justify the contract. And getting to the playoffs and winning a playoff game, I think, does enough.
They never failed. Even after the first game, our boy Luke Wilson was like, you know what? I'm kind of buying into this. And
they look good against Cleveland. They did look good against Cleveland.
Every year they trick some of the best experts in the sport to buying in on it. And it happens and they fall flat in their face.
Yeah.
It's laughable. I text Pierre 5 times a year and say, what are you guys doing?
Well, and Pierre pretends like he's a reasonable Cowboy fan. Every fan is crazy. And every fan wants to believe it. And I understand that you've been burned a lot if you're a Cowboy fan. But the last 2 weeks in particular have been like pretty obscene.
Worse than that, as bad as it gets.
Yes, it's been really, really ugly for them. All right, final one. The Buffalo Bills step into arbitration. They are offered a loss in the Super Bowl. A Super Bowl appearance and a loss in the Super Bowl. Do you take it or leave it?
Dude, there's one thing that prevents you from saying take this. It's the 4 losses in a row.
Scott Norwood and all that.
Like time has gone on, and you would think, hey, we get to a Super Bowl, it's great, and you can say, hey, my team got there. But it's the team history that prevents you from saying take this. They went to 4 in a row and lost. That is crazy stuff, man.
That is. It's unheard of, man.
And that makes you say, sorry, take.
Now, I hear you, but this would mean they beat Mahomes and they beat the Chiefs, right? Like you would assume if you're getting to the Super Bowl through the AFC, you had to run into them at some point, and you finally slayed that dragon.
Think about what a diehard Bills fan that's been around a long time was there for those 4 losses. You think he would go anywhere near this?
I think it would be sickening, the idea of them losing in the playoffs again, or in the Super Bowl again.
Yes.
I think you'd almost prefer they didn't make it.
You want to do one thing and get there and win it, and that's it.
Yeah, I'm leaving it too. They're 3-0. They look good. You got Josh Allen. Josh Allen is so good, and he's so dialed in right now.
MVP right now, isn't he?
I think he probably has to be. I mean, there's a number of guys you could probably look at early into the season, specifically the 3-0 teams. You know, Sam Darnold's getting love, Geno Smith getting love. But to me, Allen has looked so good. He spread the ball out so well. And especially with Diggs leaving, the narrative behind that, yeah, I think he's in the driver's seat right now.
Do you think what Sam Darnold's doing in Minnesota is getting teams to think maybe we need to call Carolina about this Bryce Young and second spot might be the place for him?
I maybe would have said that prior to Andy Dalton doing what he just did on Sunday. That made Bryce Young come into the spotlight a little bit more. I don't trust Carolina. I don't trust the way they operate, the owner, the way he operates things, and I don't think that's the real Andy Dalton.
But you have to believe that there was other organizations that believed in that guy's talent.
Yes.
This guy went first overall.
Teams would take him for sure. They would if you wanted to trade Bryce Young, you could find a suitor. I don't know what you're going to get, and they paid a fortune to get up to get that pick.
Crazy price.
Like, that's what's crazy about it is like they paid to get up there, and they as of now, took the wrong guy. Now, I'm not completely out on Bryce Young. I think there's still, like you said about Darnold, you got to give him a couple of years. He's a young guy. Darnold's still a young guy. Darnold's. I thought I read over the weekend he's younger than Joe Burrow. Like, because he came in, when he was like 21, he came in to the league. So he's still young. You just got to give him some opportunity. And Minnesota's well coached. They got a good team. But it's 3 weeks, too. Well, let's see where Darnold is in 3 more weeks.
He could be seeing some ghosts anytime
That's
soon.
the thing. Like, you also, you got to flip it the other way, and let's see what ends up happening with Sam Darnold. But really great story. And they're in Green Bay this week. What a game that's going to be. I'm sure Commissioner Doogie will have that somewhere on the slate when we start picking games, because Week 4 starting tomorrow night. And it's Dallas and the G-Men, I believe, down at – is it in Dallas? I think it's in Dallas tomorrow night.
No, they can't have 4 home games to start the year.
No, well, they started in Cleveland. Their first game was in Cleveland.
Okay.
So the last 2 weeks have been at home. I'm not sure where that game is. Maybe it is in New York. Anyway, Overdrive Arbitration was brought to you by Boston Pizza, the best place for any family meal. Plus, for the month of September, kids eat free with minimum purchase when you dine in. So grab the kids and hustle into your local BP tonight. Where's the game, Doogie?
It's in New York.
It is in New York.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's at MetLife. All right, you're right. They're going on the road. What's the spread in that game? It's got to be Dallas favored, but that's a tricky game to play. Who's got that game tomorrow? Is it us? I think it is us because it was a double. I hate having that game tomorrow.
Yeah.
One bad pick, and it spins you into a position where you're not seeing the board as
Al's
clearly.
brother will really be under the gun tomorrow.
I need really significant information for Al's brother. The Cowboys are laying 5.5. Like, it's a divisional game, short week. They've played awful. How bad have the Giants been that they're getting 5.5 at home on a short week in the division?
And
I don't know what that says more about.
The Giants are just the team that will jam you up and put on a performance.
I know. And yet,
it would be so Cowboys to blow that game.
That's what I'm saying. Like, as of now, my early lean is the Giants, but they're awful too. I have no faith
trash,
in the New York
man.
Giants.
They're trash.
All right, well, we'll figure that out tomorrow. Al's brother, man, I'm sure you're listening and watching. You better be prepared. He and I will have a little conference tonight like we always do, and we'll make sure we're on the same page. All right, Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel coming up. We're live at Royal Montreal. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, today's Best Bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds of the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Tom Kim getting plus 700 on the most points on the international team. That's my play. Tom Kim, he relished that opportunity 2 years ago.
Dude, remember how fired up he was throwing his hat on the green like Tiger Woods? That was fantastic theater.
I think he'll be jacked for this. I think, he's won on the tour before. He has the ability to close. I think he's a big game player, and I think he'll be comfortable in this setting. So I like Tom Kim, most points on the international team, plus 700. And I think the Americans end up winning this. But the margin, I think it'll be slim. I think it'll be tight. You get the USA 1 to 3 point differential in terms of their wins, pays plus 380. I think that's a pretty good bet. Plus money on that, a close tournament if the Americans just pull it off. That's generally where it's been. It's been close, but the Americans just squeeze. And that's who they are. They got more talent. If they show up and play, I think that's probably what we're looking at this week. Best Bets powered by FanDuel. Tee off with President's Cup bets each day of the competition on FanDuel. Please play responsibly. 19 plus, physically located in Ontario. Do you have a guy in particular you're looking at this week?
I'm looking at Pendrith and Connors, 2 guys. I mean, just because of the way it went the last time around. Right? It was like they couldn't get a putt to fall, and it needs to be better, and I want to see it better. Corey Connor, people like everybody, any pundit golf guy, say this guy can hit.
They're in awe of the way this guy hits a golf ball.
Dude, this guy can hit a 6-iron as good as anybody.
Yep.
And it's got to change on the greens, and I want to see it happen.
Yeah, and he's going out last with Hideki Matsuyama tomorrow. Like, that's pretty significant. Like, Matsuyama's the man on this international team.
Yeah,
and
I'd be fired up if that was my partner. I'd be like, I'm with a stud right now. I am just going to be dialed in, and I'm going to take dead aim at every flag.
That's what they're looking for, man. Close strong with a Canadian and Matsuyama, and I got my eyes on that. And I think if you're a golf purist, Scotty Scheffler in his prime playing up here. Like, we're going to be here tomorrow watching Scheffler. I want to walk with him a little bit, see what he's got, because I saw him when I was at Augusta. The guy's just he just stalks fairways and greens. Like,
I know.
He just walks as if he owns every place he plays. And that's effectively been what's been happening here for the last couple of years. So if you're a Gull fan and you're in Montreal and you get to come out here, putting eyes on Scotty Scheffler is pretty special right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And Shoffley, for that matter, too. So it'll be a good one. Tomorrow it starts at 11:35, and you can watch it on TSN, of course, and we're going to be here tomorrow. Noodles will be back tomorrow. We're excited for that. We're here until Friday. It's going to be a great, great week. It's been a great couple of days. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out, whether you're in Montreal or back home in Toronto. We appreciate that. We appreciate everyone tuning in today, TV, radio, podcast, or web. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
The Road to Medium, 4 p.m.
We'll chat then.